Hello, Mamas!
Hello, Pop-Ups. How are you?
Yes, and we have a very exciting video for all of you, mga mamas and papas. And what is that, Jack?
Sex on a first date.
Oh, di ba?
Hindi
And,
ba tayo mababan dito?
hindi. Basta we keep it, di ba? Kosher at least. Oh, sige.
Okay.
What about sex on the first date, Jack?
Well, people are having, more and more people are having sex on the first date nowadays.
So,
That's a fact. So do you think, is it a relationship killer or do you think it's okay?
So, mga mamas and papas, I'll be able to ask Jack certain, di ba? Racy questions. And let's get the opinion of a guy. Ayan. So, mga mamas and papas, don't go away. So, mga mamas and papas are back in a very exciting topic, which is all about sex. Sex and dating. Ayan. And on this video, I will be able to ask a certain question I'm always curious about and ask some of my male friends on what they think about having sex on a first date. Ayan. Kasi mga mamas and papas, there's a flip side on doing that. One, it can be a one-night stand. And the second is you can get into a relationship after having sex on the first date. Ayan. And I'm always curious. So, Jack, if ever, kasi mga mamas and pop-ups, we are in a conservative society. But of course, in other Western culture, that may not be so much of a deal breaker. But in ours, I would like, and I'm very curious, if, for example, ito Jack hindi third person ang tinatanong ko hindi others. Kasi mga mamas and papas, let's draw a certain truth out from Jack. Ayan, di ba? Interested ba kayo? Yung sarili mong opinion. For example, if you are on a date and you had sex with that girl on the first date, majority of that situation, will you be able to have a relationship or serious relationship with that girl? Or you will never consider her in the category of having a committed relationship? Kasi, di ba, I don't know if it's still true in your generation, but in my generation, yung mga guys noon, they will think na if I was able to have sex with her on a first date, then they consider the girl easy. Or, so, kumbaga, they might have a relationship with you, like sexual relationship, but they will never be serious with you. Yon. Nung panahon ko sa majority, I'm not saying everything, mga mamas, everyone, mga mamas and pop-ups, but in my generation, that is the attitude of men. So, siguro mga 97%. Ganon.
Oh,
Yan.
taas naman yun.
Mataas yun. Kasi nga, di ba nung panahon ko, kailangan virgin ka pa nga eh. Virgin ka pa pag pinakasalan ka eh. Oh, yun. Sa ngayon, hindi na ganyan. Kumbaga yung level ng expectation. Oh. So, sa'yo, ikaw personally first. Ayan.
Akin personally, hindi naman deal breaker ang sex on a first date.
Oo,
Kasi
sex on the
nangyayari
first
naman
date.
na talaga yan. Honestly speaking, sa mga nanonood sa atin. Kasi sex on a first date is not necessarily a mistake unless it's all about physical. Diba?
Hindi, sa start naman kasi talaga physical siya eh. But will you be able to consider that girl to have a serious relationship if the girl say yes immediately on your first date?
You can actually see if it's gonna be a serious relationship. Hindi mo naman madi-decide yan on a first date, right? Just as sex on a first date, hindi mo madi-decide kung if you're sexually compatible.
I'm asking you, Jack, I'm not asking a third person, So, ibig mo
yun ang
sabihin,
palagay ko.
if you have a sexual relationship with a girl on a first date, there is a chance that you can still consider the girl in a committed relationship or a serious relationship like marriage or something like that later on?
Oo naman, oo naman. It doesn't necessarily mean na deal breaker nga siya. It doesn't
Okay.
necessarily mean na you will end up failing the relationship or proceeding towards a more serious relationship. Because one thing leads to another if it leads to that, di ba? And unless na talagang wala kayong chemistry and you're just physically attracted to each other, dapat malinaw yun. Kasi sometimes you rule out kaagad the long-term relationship after the sex on the first date, which is totally, I don't really agree na hindi maganda yung ganun.
So sa ano
Happens,
ba sa generation mo ba or sa generation ngayon, that is nothing already? I mean, it's
hindi
not.
naman.
So
Hindi naman.
if you will advise a girl, uh, which I mean, will you still say na you shouldn't have sex on a first date?
If you can wait, if both of you can wait, then it's good if you can wait. Diba? But reality versus expectation, lalo na ngayon,
Okay.
di ba? Yung pagkatapos ng matinding ECQ, ng quarantine, di ba? Mahirap, di ba?
Maraming
But
naipon.
maraming naipon.
Ah,
It's up to you. It's actually up to you. So case-to-case basis. Kung ako ang tao, hindi ako masasabi na saint ako na hindi ko kaya na hindi makipag-sex on the first date or kaya ko makipag-sex on the first date. But if you decide if to have sex on the first date, you have to be able to discuss it openly. Dapat may trust na, di ba? Dun sa parehong tao. Kasi don't be too hard on yourself. Kasi, I mean, kung pareho kayo ng values, or pareho kayo, you're on the same page, then it's okay. But if you're not on the same page, pinilit mo siya. No, naturally naman, hindi naman papayag ang babae. Or, well, lalaki naman na nag-initiate usually.
hindi, pero ang question ko nga lang, Jack, is that in your generation now, will the level of the guy thinking that the girl is cheap if she allows herself to have sex with him on the first date is how many percent sa tingin mo?
Sa tingin ko kapag bata pa kayo,
Oo.
malaki.
Malaki. So, parang pagbata pa hindi ka seryosohin. Parang ganon.
Oo,
Mga
kasi,
nasa
syempre,
90%, 95, ganon.
oo.
Okay.
Kasi, di ba, maraming options sa mga lalaki. Marami
Ah,
silang opportunities, di ba?
oo. So, from what age yung medyo bumababa na siya? From what age?
I think when you're in your 30s or towards mid-30s, you don't want to beat around the bush, di ba? Don't want to beat around the bush.
Okay.
And mostly, medyo diretso na yung usapan pagdating sa ganyan.
Okay. Now, mga mamas and papas, I always ask this question to some of my male friends because ako kasi mga mamas and papas, sex is in conjunction with love sa akin. Kasi lumaki ako dun sa generation na yun eh. Na I can only imagine myself having sex with someone if I'm in love with someone. Now, ang question ko sa'yo, Jack, when you get like, for example, if it becomes a one-night stand, what is the expectation of a guy to the girl? Like, halimbawa, the following day, should the girl already leave or ihahatid ba siya? Yan yung mga yung protocol ba? Like, okay, number one protocol, mga mamas and papaps. Number one, Jack, how will a guy know that the girl is okay with sex on the first day or on the first time that they went out?
Pagdating sa mga ganung bagay, like when you ask certain questions, personal questions, like, halimbawa, anong suot mo pag natutulog ka?
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, it's a trust thing, di ba? If you feel that you trust this person to tell personal things about yourself, tapos ganun din yung other person, lalo na sa babae, when they
Okay.
start really, really telling you certain personal things, I think this opens up the opportunity for you to understand if you can go on a different level other than being trivial. Kasi first dates are usually trivial. But then again, meron naman nagde-date on a first date na nag-usap na sila for a long time. So it's like just a physical connection na lang. Meron na silang emotional connection prior to
Okay.
the first date.
Parang phone pal o text mate.
Ganun naman yata rin
Di
yung
ba?
nangyayari ngayon.
Oo, o text
Quarantine,
mate, di
halimbawa.
ba? Oo,
Oo, di
yan.
ba? Marami siguro
Okay.
dyan na mag-usap, hindi pa sila nag-meet. And for
Okay.
example, pag nag-meet sila, nagkakaroon lang ng validation in person kung talagang may sexual attraction. And more than sexual attraction, normally, pag mayroong emotional connection, it's easier to talk to the person. It's easier to bring up the topic about intimacy. Personal
Okay.
questions like, what is your favorite brand of perfume? Di ba? I
Ganon.
wanna smell personal, something like that, right?
Ako kasi
So,
yung mga style, kasi mga mamas and papas, medyo,
pangit kasi pakinggan pag sinabi mong style eh.
Hindi.
Usually,
Yung kumbaga, ibig ko sabihin, personally, like for example, one of the styles of the guy, yung suave ba, yung gano'n. Halimbawa, you cross the street, tapos hahawakan ka niya to assist you, di ba? While crossing. Tapos hindi niya nabibitawan yung kamay mo. O, yung gano'n. Yon. So, yung pa lang, yung paghawak, iba na yung dating. Masisense mo
naman
kasi yung
nag-start.
hawak ng kaibigan sa hawak na may mali siya. O, sabihin nyo mga mamas and papas, do comment below if what I'm saying is true, di ba? Like for example, if a guy will give me the drink, tapos ano yung grace?
Glance.
Hindi,
Grace.
yung kamay niya, dadapi sa kamay mo habang hawak mo yung baso, di ba? Kukunin mo, yung ganon.
Style.
Yung may mali siya. O, di ba? Ayun.
Importante naman, sa akin kasi importante na maging malinaw from the very start eh. Kasi dapat malinaw rin sa babae. Kung gusto, kasi usually naman lalaki talaga nag-initiate eh. And I would not deny the fact na men would always want to get into her pants. The soonest possible way. Soonest possible time.
Ayan, and
Totoo
by
yun.
the, ayan, mga mamas
So,
and
hindi-
papaps, do watch yung 10 lies that men often say in order to get into your pants. Ayan. Okay.
It's up to the girl na lang kung if she determines na sincere ba yung guy or enough for her to trust the guy to be intimate with him.
Okay. Now, second protocol. Okay. So, halimbawa how do you define the location to do it?
Location.
Location! Kasi nasa date kayo eh. Di ba? How do you... Hindi, ano yun, very casual lang ba? Like, for example, to your place or do you go somewhere yung may ganon? O wala nang ganon, ano? Dati kasi may mga ganon eh, nung panahon ko. Wala na kasi clear, ano na tayo eh. Nice,
Ako laman siguro, I think, huwag mo naman dalhin ka agad sa motel, di ba?
O nga, so the location, normally, kasi curious ka ako eh. So, where do you bring the person?
Kung may sarili kang place or kung sa hotel
O sa
na
place
maayos
niya.
kayo.
Okay.
Depende naman yun eh. Kaya lang, something about yung sleazy motels kasi there's something good about it. I mean, when you try to make an impression, halimbawa, sa isang babae, tapos, yun na nga, gusto mo na maging intimate, tapos dadalhin mo pa siya sa sleazy motel. Parang, iba yung feeling eh, no?
But do you decide or the girl decide?
I think you have to make the girl decide as well.
So you ask. So, men normally ask. Yun yung protocol.
Well,
or the girl can suggest.
Yeah, probably the girl can suggest.
Okay.
Unless nahihiya yung babae, di ba?
Okay. So the third protocol. Okay. After doing it, let's just say kasi sa akin mga mamas and papas, I don't think na you are in love with the person when on a first date, or even if you are already texting each other or having a call. So it is basically physical desire. So ang question ko ngayon is, after doing the deed, okay, normally kasi 'di ba, the girl tends to like, hugging and stuff like that. But ano yun, should she expect a certain caring gesture afterwards, or it really depends on the guy?
Normally, it depends on the guy. But then again, if I would like to tell the pop-ups out there, kapag halimbawa is given a certain situation,
Uh-huh.
kung talaga namang try mo naman make it wonderful experience for her. Hindi yung ma-feel niya agad na parang gusto mo na siya sipahin ka ko, di ba?
Do you, and normally, is that like, di ba kasi after sometimes doing the deed, you become tired and you end up sleeping, di ba? So, ikaw normally, should the girl, how does the girl, how do you part ways when you are in that situation? Halimbawa, you met and both of you have cars. Or halimbawa, pinaiwan mo yung kotse niya para sumakay sa kotse mo. So, she ended up hitching a ride with you going there. So, ano yon? Is it an obligation of, or is it a protocol that the guy will bring the girl to home or to the car or whatever, or the girl can just go down and leave you at peace? Ano ba yung ano dyan? Ano yung general?
Generally, I think it's totally up to the girl how she wants it. Kasi on the first date, dapat na pag-usapan nyo na. Either susunduin mo ba siya or magdadala siya ng sarili niyang sasakyan, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
if, di ba? Pag ganun, I think, if you think wala talagang something magical about it after the deed, it's best to be honest with each other.
Hindi nga.
This goes
Let's
with
just say walang magical, but do you bring the girl home, or or the girl has to bring herself home?
Well, you have to, personally speaking from me, kung ako yun, give sense of respect naman dun sa babae na ihatid mo man lang, di ba?
Okay.
Ihatid mo man lang siya, make sure na she's okay. Kasi if you plan not to see her again,
okay,
make it, patulugin mo muna siya ng mahimbing, and then after sa kanila mo realize.
Okay. Oh, next expectation, yung level na expectation ng girl. Kasi 'di ba, a lot of guys will tell you, I'll give you a call, or I'll see you, I'll see you soon. Pero wala talaga sinasabi when. Alam mo 'yon, or alam mo 'yon, and should the girl, if for example the guy doesn't call the girl within that day, and bawa nag-part ways na, and on that day hindi ka na tinawagan, is there a meaning on it, or ano, kasi 'di ba ang babae kasi ang hilig sa umasa alam mo yon, and especially sa conservative society natin, still I believe, unless na talagang you're young or whatever, or you're into it, normally kasi the girl will expect a certain, response from the guy after that night, di ba? So, yung, ano yung period of time na mag-e-expect pa yung girl na tatawag yung guy, or yung mga ganon, yung follow through, parang ganon. Na pag lumagpas na yon, wag na siyang umasa.
On the spot mo talaga ako dito.
Oh, hindi. It's general. Oh. Normally, ganon. Kasi hindi naman tayo mga psychiatrists, hindi naman tayo psychologists, hindi naman tayo writers. So, we draw from our own experiences, and through the experiences of our friends. So, ano yung typical na nasasabihin mo, nako girl, wag ka nang mag-umasa, hindi na, that is it, one night stand na yan, versus sa ano.
Well, if there's inconsistency, I don't think, malalaman mo naman prior and after, right? prior to the deed and after the deed. If
Ah.
there's a significant difference in consistency, in interest, in the level of interest, you should know, right? Kaya lang may sort of denial stage kasi ang babae, di ba?
Kaya nga,
So,
pero ibig ko nga sabihin, ano yung kasi mamaya talagang na-busy lang yung guy, 'di ba?
pwede rin.
Halimbawa, 'di
Oo.
ba? So ano yung duration of period na masasabi mo na girl, forget it, 'di ba? He's not into you anymore.
I don't think there's a certain time frame, but if the inconsistency is consistent, then you should know.
Ah, ako kasi, I believe, kasi, I know when a guy really loves you or has at least an emotional attachment on you versus physical. Para kasi sa akin, sa mga ganun situation, mga mamas and papaps, and if you agree with what I'm saying, give us a thumbs up and, please hit that subscribe button and click that, Jack?
Notification bell.
Yes,
That
notification bell.
help.
Um, so that every time we upload the video, you will be notified. Ayan. So, para sa akin kasi, if a guy doesn't notify you, uh, even on the day itself, para sa akin unless he got into an accident or something like that, if the guy really enjoyed the night with you, I don't think it will go beyond a day. Para sa akin. Kasi kapag, whether, kung halimbawa, nagustuhan niya yung pangyayari na yon, mabilis pa yan sa 4:00, gusto niyang ulitin ulit. So, I don't think he will wait another 24 hours before he will contact you. Now, mga mamas and papas, let's just be clear. There's a difference between, having a serious relationship and follow through with what happened. Halimbawa, if the guy retains his interest on you, then there is a chance. Pero if the guy doesn't even text you or in the entire day after you separated, I don't think the guy would like to do it again. In the list, so yun, yung ganon. So, let's just say naman what will bound you to have a relationship with the girl if you had sex with her, kasi kumbaga sa you already had the cake, so, and you eat it too, so what is the factor besides the physical desire for the girl, for you to build a relationship with the girl if you already had it? So,
Yeah, well, yeah. Hindi nga, well, yung sex on the first date isn't the best strategy or the best circumstance na mapupunta ka. I think mas maganda talaga na meron kayong emotional connection. So it just happens probably na may emotional connection kayo, kaya nag-sex kayo on the first date. But after the first sex on the first date, pag wala pa rin kayong chemistry, I think it's not the most ideal situation you're gonna be in. Kasi you already had your cake and you ate it too na nga. Sabi mo nga, di ba? And then, what else is there to be curious about, right?
okay.
Except trying to get to know the person inside out.
So, so that we will end in a positive note, di ba? Yung curious ako, let's just say, how do you get from sa guy, how do you know that it is not just about sex, but you really care for the girl? Kasi, like, for example, you had a date. Albawa, let's just say, the scenario, mga mamas and papaps, is you started with the text, call, then you met for the first time, had sex, and then you did it again, So, when do a guy really know na this is not just sex, it's really about, loving or caring for this person? What
Kasi
is the distinction?
You're talking about like establishing something long term, di ba?
Hindi nga, pero ano yung distinction mo to know, like for example, kasi nililito ko yata si Papa Jack. Like for example ako, mga mamas and papas, I have a lot of male friends. And I know that a male friend is just gonna be a friend and not anymore, something else if I cannot imagine kissing the friend. Halimbawa, if I have a male friend and kahit anong gwapo niyan or if I cannot imagine that kissing that guy, I know for sure na we are just friends. Yun yung tanong ko sa'yo. If you already had sex with the girl, you have repeated it more than once, then how do you now know that it can lead to a more serious relationship?
Ang tanong ko sa'yo, Jean, kasi why would you date someone if you don't imagine na nakikiss mo siya or may mangyayari sa inyo, di ba?
Hindi kasi nga sa male friend kasi alam ko kapag male lang kasi hindi ko siya I'm not physically attracted to him.
So you don't date him.
That's why I know that he will just be a friend ever and ever. Yun yung tanong ko sa'yo. Ano yung malalaman mo na this is just for sex and if you are already seeing the girl, halimbawa, you had sex and then you continually date, but how do you know as a guy na this can be something else? You know what I'm saying? I'm just comparing the situation.
Yun nga, pag pinapakilala ka na sa mga friends, family,
Okay.
there's something more personal about everything.
So, hindi ka na
there's more.
secret.
Hindi ka secret. Hindi na siya masyadong, there are certain things na he's very vocal in telling you without you asking for him to tell you something about himself.
Ayan.
Openness, I think. Being open ng lalaki sa babae.
Okay. So, yan, mga mamas and papas, yan ang tip. Pagka nag-sex kayo on a first date, and then you do it again, and then you're trying to figure out if it's going to be a more committed relationship, yan. Pag hindi pa kayo pinapakilala sa mga kaibigan, sa pamilya, wala. Hanggang doon na lang. Ayan, sisihin mo sarili mo na ipag-sex ka on a first date. Pero kapag nilakilala ka na din, nagwagi ka. Okay, so mga mamas and papas, please give us a thumbs up if you like this topic and do comment below on what you think about having sex on a first date. Ako kasi personally, mga mamas and papas, I would like to try. Kasi I'm in the age that I can try. Ayan. I'm curious. Ayan. Yun. Sige. Okay, Jack. Parting ways mo sa mga mamas and papas? Ma-advise mo pagdating dyan?
Don't berate yourself too much if you've done it on the first date. Diba? Minsan hindi mo naman kasalanan yun. Choice nyo yun pareho as adults. So, I'm talking to the adult audience, ha?
Yes, adult lang to, ha?
If you are like very, very young in your early 20s, I would suggest not to do it on a first date. Kasi most men would be really, really trying to explore. That's
Okay.
it.
Kumbaga, notch on their bedpost. Ayan. Sige.
So,
Aha.
but if you're lucky, it could be something new kasi it's a start of really sharing yourself to someone. But in many cases, pag hindi, one night stand lang talaga yun.
Hindi, pero I agree with you. Don't, for women especially, mga mamas especially, na they might end up blaming themselves why they did that. Ako kasi, if you did the deed, then just enjoy. Just enjoy the ride, di ba? Di ba? Especially if you're already an adult. Ayan. Wag niyo, as I've said, pareho kami ni Jack, yung mga 20s, yung mga 25 below, wag muna. Para sa akin enjoy muna yung talagang dating first, di ba? Ayun. So, pero yung mga may edad na and they can be responsible and yung advice ko nga often if pag tinatanong ako ng mga pamangkin ko in regards to sex, ang sabi ko sa kanila, one, if you have a baby, unexpected pregnancy, and it is okay with you. Second, if you have a disease na galing doon, okay lang sa'yo. Pangatlo, if you don't see the guy ever again, okay din lang sa'yo. Pag yung 3 questions na yan, ang sagot nyo yes, mga mama, okay lang mag-sex on a first date. Okay, so yan mga mamas and papas, thank you so much for staying and we hope that you enjoyed this topic. Okay, bye-bye!
Be safe. Be safe.
Bye-bye!